as it says on here, my name's Kathy Ellis, and my business is called Little Piggy. And I'll give you a bit of info about why it's called that in a second. Thanks very much for coming along here today. We've got not an extensive amount of time. I have attempted to leave some time at the end for some questions, so we'll pick up on that. Also, towards the end, I've got a resource that supports what I'm talking to you about today. So if you want to get hold of a copy of that, there'll be a URL, but there'll also be a QR code if you want to grab it. So that is there. The other thing that you'll find is again a link where you can book into my calendar if you want to have a one-to-one chat. So you can do that. So what I'm looking at with you today is this concept of maybe getting a bit of a toolkit together. This is based on lots and lots and lots of experience. So, as I said, my name is Kathy Ellis. My business is Little Piggy. I've had businesses since, well, between 25 and 30 years. I can't pinpoint the exact date because I started as a side hustler all that time ago. I was an employee, had a really good job. What do they call it? Golden chains, where you're in a job that pays you loads of money and you can't afford to leave it, which I desperately wanted to for quite a long time. So the headline story about me is that, you know, I've had businesses over the past 25 plus years. I'm a business mentor. I'm an author. I do a lot of speaking. I help primarily much smaller scale businesses in terms of startup and growth. That's like the headline stuff. But in terms of the reality of what sits underneath that description is that about the first 8 years of my business, it was a side hustle and it was doing pretty well. And I was offered redundancy and they offered me a lot of money to go away. I don't know what that says, but they offered me a lot of money to go away. And I said, yes, please. So I took the money to go away. I thought, great, this is it. I've got a bit of seed funding now underneath me. I can really get going. I had quite a lot of clients by that time. I was doing stuff around personal branding and personal development. I was working a lot in corporate organisations. Great, brilliant. So I took the money. Does anybody remember as far back as 2008? Can anybody remember what happened in 2008? Financial crash. So there was me with my redundancy money and then no customers because everybody stopped paying for the stuff that I was selling. And it was really, really hard. At the same time, because I've been an employee for quite a number of years in a really good pensioned job, my pension was defrauded. So I was there in by 2010, basically almost on the streets out here with a bowl because it was really difficult. And it was I realised that my biggest problem wasn't that I didn't have the skills or all of those kinds of things. My biggest problem is I knew sweet FA about how to run a business because I'd fallen into the trap of thinking, I've got all these skills, they're great. All I need to do is tell people I've got these skills and tell them how much they are and have a swanky website and a few business cards and they're going to queue. Well, that doesn't happen. So I had to take myself right back to the drawing board and start sort of business 101. What does it actually mean to run a business? And I think this for me is my, as I say, this underlines this introduction because this is my why, if you will, in as much as the businesses that I work with, I want to make sure that they've got strong business foundations. Because if you know how business works, and actually it is pretty simple, but if you put the things in place, if you put all of the things in place, you're going to be building on concrete, not on sand. So what I'm going to go through with you today is some of the lessons learned. It's going to be a really broad brush across everything because I can't give you like 20 odd years worth of learning. But I will give you as many hints and tips and ideas as I can. And as I say, I've got a resource at the end if you want to get hold of that. All right. Okay, so I'm going to look at 5 things. The first thing I'm going to look at is validation. Does anybody want your business? Does anybody want it? We're going to look at the setup, some of the key things in terms of getting your business off the ground. Definitely going to think about time management. Okay, so just by show of hands, how many people are going to be starting, say, as a business of 1 or a push 2? Okay, so time management. Let's think about this. Actually, show of hands, how many people have got a job or have had a job in the past, which is the thing that paid them their money? Okay, running a business is not like having a job. You have a job, plus you have a business to run. So everything that goes on in the background of you as an employee, as a business owner, you're now responsible for that too. So time management is huge. Some stuff about money, and then some stuff about marketing. Okay, so these are the 5 things that I want to look at with you this morning. So I'm going to dive into this concept of validation. And a lot of people start a business because they're good at something, or they like doing something, or they're interested in something. The fact of the matter is, we need to make sure that other people want it, are interested in it, are paying for it already. And we need to understand what's driving them to do that. Just because I like painting furniture doesn't mean that if I put something up on Facebook Marketplace, that somebody's going to buy it. Okay? Especially if they see somebody underneath it, but we won't go into that. So this thing, the whole validation side of things, I just want to give you a quick example of something. Anybody here watch The Dragon's Den? Okay. Some years ago, there was a guy came in and he'd invented this thing. You know those rotary air dryers you have in your garden, right? So the wind comes, blows it, helps it dry. So he came in with one of those, basically, with an umbrella on top. And they said, "What's this?" And he said, "Well, my wife complains that every time she puts the washing out, it rains." Okay? So what I thought would be a good idea would be to have like a cover over the top, so that it didn't get wet. The problem with putting the cover over the top is it actually stopped the wind getting to the thingy. So basically, you just had rain and then wet clothing hanging there. Do you think he got any investment? No. He thought it was a good idea. And when they asked him about his market research, the people he'd asked was his wife and his next door neighbour. Okay? That's not validation. So what we want to think of is, key thing, who exactly is your customer? Because it isn't everybody, and it's not necessarily the people that you think it might be. You have to really dig deep into this idea of who your customer is. I'm going to say something here as well. A lot of the time, we use this word niche. So people are thinking about, maybe I'll work in this particular sector, or I'll work with this very specific group of people. I found, particularly with much smaller businesses, this is not really the thing that works. What I found that works far more is if you're much more specific about your customer base, you need to do some demographic research about them. Obviously, you need to know where they live, you know, have they got the money to pay for what you do, all of those kinds of things. But the thing that is far more important is the problem that you're going to solve for them. They want to buy from somebody who knows what their issue is, and therefore will be able to help them solve that issue. So this concept of, and I get my tongue twisted around this, psychographics. So it's things to do with what drives people, why they think they need this thing. I find if you're thinking about niching, it's much easier to niche around the psychographic element, their need, their problem, their want. So somebody who wants low-cost branding because they're a business startup, okay, and they don't want to spend too much money because they haven't got it. They're worried about maybe it won't be as good as they need it to be, those kinds of things, rather than the fact that they might be starting a virtual assistant business in Stratford-upon-Avon. Yeah, it's a very, very different thing. So who exactly the customers are, what their problems are, what problems you're going to be solving for them. You've also got to make sure that they've got money. because it's no good trying to attract people who haven't got the money to pay you. Now, a lot of people want to start businesses that have got a social element to them, and I applaud that, and that is absolutely hugely important. But one thing you've got to remember is what they tell you on the aeroplane when nobody's listening, because they're doing the safety things. You know, we're all thinking whether we want a drink or some peanuts or something. But they say, put your face mask on first, because you can't help anybody if you're not helping yourself. So unless you're going along right from day one, really deeply into something that is social enterprise, community interest company, that kind of thing, if you want to have some social good in your business, it's probably better to start a business that starts earning you some money that you can then put into that business to help people who can't afford that. Okay? And you need to test some of this before you actually do anything else. So let's think about this. Talk to people. Do not ask your friends. Do not ask your family. Your family will do one of two things. They'll say it's a brilliant idea, or they'll tell you, don't be stupid, keep your job, go back to work. Okay? They're not good judges of this. Friends also can be a little bit too one way or the other. So you need to try and ask people who aren't connected to you. This is why networking works really well. If you've got something that you want to trial, create some kind of test model of it where you can get people to give you feedback. Does this work for you? Has it worked? What bit worked? What bit didn't work? Okay, so that's the James Dyson process. What 4,500 and something times he didn't invent the Dyson vacuum cleaner, because he kept testing. Okay, and I will say, check out Enterprise Nation, because there are loads and loads of organisations out there that give you information and advice. The British Business Bank is another one, but actually Enterprise Nation's website is full of stuff. But also they have their lunch and learns that they do every day, short little training sessions. Their blog is fantastic, brilliant downloadable resources. So I definitely get you to check that out. And then I would say, if we're looking at getting something off the ground straight away, find 10 people. Anybody here on socials? LinkedIn, okay, Insta, anything like that? If you put a quick call out on one of your socials to say, I just need 10 people to give me an honest opinion on this. If we're mates, don't reply, okay? You will get people who will come back and ask them, what are you finding difficult with whatever it is? What are you doing at the moment to solve that issue? And you can ask them how much they're paying for it, or would they pay, what would they pay if there was a better solution for them? Okay, very, very, very simple process. Setup. Yeah, I would say, I was talking to a group of people yesterday, and one of the biggest things I find, as I say, is that people say, start a business, set up an Instagram account, and forget all the bits in the middle. And so these bits can be seen as boring, but if you do them at the beginning, they're done and they're out of the way, and they give you a good foundation. Okay, so the first thing is, what are you going to be? And to be honest, people call themselves so many different things. Oh, I'm a freelancer, I'm a consultant, I'm this or I'm that. Actually, you're one of two things. You're a sole trader or you're a limited company. Okay, in the eyes of taxation people, and in terms of business, this is the most important thing. Okay, sole trader, limited company, decision is yours. Nobody should tell you, oh, you're not earning enough money to be a limited company. You can be a limited company without having earned a penny if you want to. You really need to look at the differences between those two things to decide which would be better for you. Make sure that you have a separate bank account. As a sole trader, the money's yours and goes in and out, but it is really bad practice for that money to go in and out of your personal bank account. Okay, and it makes your accounting so hard. So set up a separate bank account for your business. It'll make things a lot easier in the end. Make sure you're registered with HMRC. I did talk to somebody a little while ago at a networking event who'd been in business for 10 years. And in the conversation, I mentioned HMRC and she said, what's that? And I said, okay, I'm not going to hear that, but when you go home from here, you are contacting this organisation saying, I'm starting a business tomorrow. So, okay, make sure you register. Check out your insurances, what ones you need, because there will be basic ones that you might need, things like public liability, professional indemnity, particularly if you're in any kind of consulting role. But depending on the kind of business you're in, there will be a whole raft of insurances that you need to be aware of, and also the legal elements of things like health and safety, etc. Do you all sort of live in and around London?
Yes.
Okay, so there is a brilliant database. It's called COBRA, like the snake. It's an acronym which I can't remember. It's available in most public libraries in and around London. And it is a brilliant database because you put in the kind of business you're thinking about starting, and it tells you all the legal elements, all the financial elements. It's a really fantastic piece of kit. You can't get it by Googling. Okay, you have to actually be physically there. So I definitely recommend you have a look at that. And things like terms and conditions and contracts and all of those kinds of things. If you decide to join organisations like the Federation of Small Businesses, which I actually recommend really heavily, they actually have all of these kinds of things as downloadable resources, where you just put your business name in the blank bit. Okay.
Sorry, what's the name of that
The
one?
Federation of Small Businesses, FSB. Okay. What you don't need, I'm really sorry, you don't need fancy branding. Not in the first bit. Okay. I've always said to people, get a blank white business card with your name, email address, and phone number on, just to get the ball rolling. Okay. You don't need it. You don't need an expensive website to start off. You do need a website, but it doesn't have to be all singing and all dancing. And please don't obsess about what the images are. Obsess about the language that's actually used on the website. Okay. Google doesn't look for your pictures, it looks for your words. You don't have to be on every social media platform. You have to be where your customers are. Right? Business cards. Okay. I haven't had a business card for years. I do these like little postcards with some of the sayings that I use to my clients. One of my favourite ones is just effing do it. And I have information on the back and things they can write down and stuff like that. Practical, not a business card that somebody chucks in the bin as soon as they get home. Okay. And you don't have to be a limited company, you can be. You know, these things are your decision. So I would say the kind of thing is open a bank account. This is an action. Register as self-employed or whichever way that you want to do it, and check out Enterprise Nation's startup checklist, because this is a really useful tool that's available to you. Okay. Third thing, this is where you have to become more than one person. So you have to be the person that does stuff, you have to be the person that sells stuff, and you have to be your full admin team. And this is where the problems sometimes arise with people who are coming out of employment into running their own business, because they didn't necessarily realise all the stuff that was going on behind the scenes that they are now actually responsible for. Chief cook, bottle washer, you're everything. Okay. So time management, that you need to think about this in terms of chunking up your day and chunking up your week. And you have to leave time for the essentials, because dealing with customers, yes, it is essential, but you're not going to get customers if you're not doing some of the behind the scenes stuff. So if you ignore that, over time, it will have a really detrimental effect on your business. So if we think about delivery in a week, maybe about 60% of your time, whatever it is you're doing, making, consulting, whatever you might be doing, designing, any of those things. About 30% of your time needs to be spent on development, and that will be everything that will come under like the marketing and promotion side of things. But that's everything from keeping your website up to date, going networking, talking to customers, engaging with people who have made inquiries, all of that kind of stuff. And then about 10% admin. Now, this is when you're up and running. When you are starting, you need to swap those numbers around. I would say that your admin needs to be at least 50% because you get things in place. All of your standard documentation, all of your checklists, all of your templates, all of those kinds of things. And then your development will probably take up a similar sort of amount because your delivery at the beginning is not going to be the numbers that you want. Okay, it should be a slow build. It's not as if you're necessarily going to have people banging down your door. And I think that you need to think smaller in terms of maybe the selling, the money coming in, but more in terms of the administration. Okay. Stop being distracted. Turn notifications off on every device that you've got and put them face down. Because if you are doing something that you're concentrating on and a little thing comes up on a screen, even if there's no sound, your brain will have gone somewhere else for 15 minutes. And if you've only got half an hour to do something, you've lost that opportunity. Turn notifications off when you're working. Make sure that you block things out in your diary. Manage it properly. Don't let things just appear out of the... If you need time for doing some marketing or some strategy or some customer engagement or anything like that, you block that out in your diary, okay? You need to make sure that you batch similar tasks together. So make sure anything financially, invoicing, all of that kind of stuff is done at a similar time. Friday afternoons are great for that kind of thing, okay? Because you don't get a lot of calls Friday afternoon. Please be aware that it should be your choice to work on a weekend, not a necessity. Okay, that's a real key. And template everything. Create templates, create checklists. Do not reinvent wheels every time you need to do something. Okay. So map out a typical week. They will all be sort of atypical to begin with, but map out maybe your desired week, right? Make sure that you use the diary, as I say, block things out. Your business is one of your customers. So if you give your customers care and attention, you need to give your business care and attention too. It's not like somebody phones up, I've got a client, somebody phones him up, says, Tom, I need you to come and shoot this video at so-and-so and so-and-so. And I cannot get him to break the habit of saying, yes, I'll be there. Because the problem is with Tom is that all the stuff at the back is not being done. So rather than saying, I can't do it at that time, but I can do these 3 or 4 times, are any of those available to you? Most people will say, oh, I can do Tuesday at 3. So this is the kind of thing you need to take control. Don't let the business control you. Pricing and profit. Okay. One of the things I talk about a lot is this concept of the triangle of people, product, and price. And this triangle needs to be, I'm sure, please, I'm not a mathematician, equilateral, because I think that means that all of the angles are the same. Okay. And the thing is that your people, the product that you're selling and the price that you're charging for it needs to be in unison. Because if one of those things is slightly out of kilter, the wrong person, but the right product and the right price, the right person and price, but the wrong product, it will mean that you're not going to sell very much. Okay. Pricing you need to do for profitability, not in terms of, let me lick my finger and see which way the wind is blowing, or I think I'm worth this, or I'm just starting out, so I'll put my prices up when I'm more experienced. Impossible. Okay. So if we think about managing money, you need to understand how much money your business needs to bring in. Okay. You are a cost in your business. You do not pay yourself when the business is making enough money. Okay, because that will never happen. You have to put yourself in as a cost of the business. You might put yourself in as a minimal cost to start with, but you have to get used to paying yourself some money. So you need to work out how much needs to come in every year. So it has to cover your costs, which includes you. And you need to think about this when you're coming out of work as well, in terms of taxation. Whatever you have earned or are earning as an employee, your annual salary, you actually cost between 30 and 40% more than that with on costs. So things like national insurance, things like pensions, all of that kind of stuff. So if you're thinking, I need to replace a salary and I'm earning 40,000 a year, your business needs to bring you in probably between 60 and 70,000. All right. So you need to really consider this when you're setting your prices and all the types of people that you want to attract. It's a mathematical equation, really. And doing the maths actually takes the emotion out of it. Because if you do a spreadsheet that actually says, this is exactly how much I have to bring in every year, you know, month by month, my products are selling at X number of pounds, what you'll either find out is that you've underpriced your products because you've got to sell 1,000 of them every week, okay? Or there's something wrong with the maths somewhere. So I would definitely recommend that you get an Excel spreadsheet. It's probably the easiest thing to do. Make sure things like hourly rates and stuff like that, you will not be working the same number of hours with clients as you might have done working as an employee. So you might be doing a 40-hour work week. If you're running your own business, that sort of client interaction will probably be about 20 hours. So therefore, you've got to bring in as much money in the 20 hours. I hope I'm making sense here, because it is maths. Being able to add up, subtract, multiply, and divide is crucial. Okay. I think that everything needs to be tracked. When you're setting up a business bank account, a couple of ones that I quite like at the moment, Starling is a pretty good one, and I think Metal is a newer one. They're app-based bank accounts, which means you can manage things from your phone, which is really, really good, or any kind of device, and they're free. And actually, you can use them really effectively to keep an eye on where money's going and how it's being spent. I would always recommend that you use an online invoicing system. There are brilliant ones that you pay for, things like Free Agent, you can pay for that, Xero, you pay for that. I use something called QuickFile, okay, little sister of QuickBooks, good, because QuickBooks is complicated. But QuickFile is free. The only thing I pay £18 a year to link it to my bank account. So I do my reconciliation within there. So the cost of 18 quid, all my spending out and in is managed within QuickFile. Okay. Make sure that you research the rates in your market. And I put here, don't race to the bottom. Cheaper doesn't necessarily bring you business. It just brings you people who want to buy the thing. If your model is Poundland, that's fine. If your model is Selfridges, that's not fine. Okay, so you need to make sure that you're pricing for what you need to earn based on the numbers. You need to think about value. And I would say, you know, you're saying about your having something for people with less money. I talk about the product staircase, and it's really important in businesses to actually have different levels of pricing, from entry level, medium level, and higher level, so that you've got what's called an upsell and a downsell, but you've also got a point where people can identify themselves as being on the right level to pay for your products or services. Okay, it really does make a difference. Calculate the minimum amount of money you need to earn an hour, and then when somebody says, can we do something about the price, you can actually say, yes, I can make it more expensive. But the key to that is, if you know that if you take money off, you have to work out what you have to take off your shopping trolley in Tesco. So when somebody says, is there any way we can do this cheaper? Your answer is no. That's the price. They wouldn't do that if they went into a high street shop. You know, you're not sort of Shepherd's Bush Market, okay? So you can actually set up a separate account also to sort of siphon off some money for your taxation at the end of the year, so it doesn't come as a shock. So anything that's coming in, you can actually siphon off, say about 30% every month just into this place. So when you get your tax bill, it's sitting there ready, waiting to be paid. Okay. And track everything from day one. You can actually claim in your first year back 7 years. If you've got receipts and things like that that shows you setting your business up over a period of time, or you're bringing things into the business like computer equipment and those kinds of things, if you've got those and you can prove that they are used in the business, they can go into your first year's spending. Okay, which is why quite often in the first year you don't necessarily make a profit, but that's good, so you don't have to pay any tax. But that's another thing altogether. Marketing. Marketing isn't social media. Social media is a tool. Okay, people marketed without social media, and people still do market without social media. Okay, so marketing is the process of engaging people, getting them to understand who you are, what you do, and hopefully wanting to buy from you. So it's being where they are. So if your customers are on Instagram, hey, happy days, be there. But you could just as well be on a market stall in Romford if your customers are there. Okay, so you need to, this going back to who your customers are, you really need to understand where they hang out. What is it they do? What do they engage with at the moment? This is another reason to talk to people who might be like your potential customers, because you can find this kind of information out. Okay. You need strategy. If you're using social media, if you're using email marketing, if you're using any of these things, why? What do you want out of it as an end result? Because blah, blah, blah is just blah, blah, blah. But if you're putting stuff out that says, I've got this brilliant new thing and I've been experimenting it and it does this, and it does that, does the other thing. Want to find out more? Contact me today. That is marketing, because you've got a call to action built into it. Okay, not just saying, I've got this great business, do you want to engage with me? It's a very different thing. And I think make sure everybody, and this is where you do tell your granny, right? Everybody knows what you do and what you're looking for in terms of customers. I remember being at an event with my husband once, round table. He was here, I was here, I was chatting to this lady, he was chatting to that lady, and I heard him, she must have said, what's your wife do? And I heard him telling her. And afterwards I said, I don't do that. That's not my business. Anyway, so I think you have to sit people down and say, this is what I do. So if anybody asks, or you hear anybody say, oh, I wish I had one of those. Oh, I know somebody who can help you with that. Okay. Join networking groups, get involved, and don't be shy about asking. Ask people to be introduced to other people. Ask for referrals. If you've done a good job for somebody, ask them to recommend you to somebody else. I know sometimes it feels a little bit creepy, but it's not. And most people, it's like reviews. Most people assume that if you've done a really good job, people are going to leave you a review. No, absolutely not. Beg them, leave me a review. And even give them the words that they can just copy and paste if you want. So be crystal clear about your ideal customer, because that will mean that you can hang out where they are, right? You can hang out, you can then talk to them, you can engage with them, you can get to know them. What you will find is that the business you start on day one is not the business you're running on day 365. You will find that the people that you thought that you were targeting, you probably aren't. You will have a much clearer idea of the types of people that you want to work with, what their needs are, and you will be adjusting your products and services accordingly. But that's not just year one. I'm X number of years in, and I am in the process at the moment of rejigging my services for next year. And I do it over Christmas time every year, because I learn something new every year about what people want and need. Okay. Make sure that you've got a message that resonates with them. Your message needs not to be about what you do, but what problem you solve for them. Okay, always put their problem first and put what you do second, because what's that thing? People tune into radio WIIFM. What's in it for me? Okay, sell the problem. What is it? Sell the sizzle, not the sausage. You're the sausage, right? And I would say start slowly. Couple of things. Do a couple of things. Maybe get yourself a really basic website. I found something the other day. It's called Card, CARRD. And you can set up a really nice, sort of swanky, sort of one-page website for the princely sum of 20 quid a year. It looks really nice. One of my clients has just set one up for a new business that he's starting. And it's just somewhere you can send people. Okay. And so I'd say write down where your customers spend their time. Join a relevant group. Loads of this stuff is online as well, if that's an issue for you getting out and about. And talk to as many people as you possibly can. So, I know it's been a massive run through. Perfection is divine, which none of us are. Okay, good is good enough. And actually, I think that perfectionism is procrastination in disguise. Okay, so you don't have to be perfect. You just have to make progress. Okay, baby steps. Okay, you might go 2 steps forward and 1 step back, but you're still 1 step forward. Okay, start with what you can control, the things like the setup side of things, the validations side of things, and having those conversations. So start with those things. And then remember that you're not alone, that there are communities of people out there that can understand, that can help, that can support. And they do give that help, support and understanding generally pretty openly and freely. Okay, so don't feel that you have to do it all yourself, and don't feel that just because within 6 months you're not raking it in, that there's something wrong with you. Usually, if you're not raking it in the first 6 months, it's, well, you're not going to rake it in the first 6 months, just full stop. But also, it's generally because something's out of kilter. It's either the price or the customer or the product that you're offering. So you keep having to go back to the drawing board. Okay. So check out Enterprise Nation. As I said, community forums, they've got them there. They've got chat groups and all of that kind of stuff. So there are lots of things there. One of the ones that I like is the startup group. They run webinars, and the lunch and learns every day are brilliant. As I say, it's just half an hour, and then they get put onto the website, so you can go back and watch ones maybe you couldn't see. They have templates, they have guides, expert advice. So they have a whole team of advisors, which, as I said, I am one. And you can find all of their details on there. And if you sort of give them a ring as well and say, I'm looking for somebody who might know something about X, Y, or Z, they're quite often say, oh, check out such and such. And they'll put you in touch. You know, they'll tell you the person that you should be looking for. And I'll say, check it out at their website, which is very easy. It's enterprisenation.com. So, what next? If you want a bit of a checklist, I'm a swine for checklists and templates. You're more than welcome to get yourself a copy of this with that URL. I'll show you the QR codes in a moment. And if you want to have a bit of a chat, you can do that with that URL as well. So it might be easier to do the QR codes on the next slide. Okay. Yeah, do come get the checklist, because blood, sweat and tears went into that. I will say. And so, yeah, that's it. So those are the QR codes. Might make it a little bit easier. That's it in terms of what I wanted to cover. Any quick question? I'm not sure what the time is. Oh, we're just at time. Yeah, okay. Got 10 minutes. See that? Yeah. Any questions on anything that I've said or anything that I haven't said? Oh, hi.
Hello. What happens if your customers are not paying you? Someone else is paying. Sorry. What happens if your customers are not paying, but someone else is paying? In my case, I'm thinking of becoming, for example, a tutor.
Yeah.
So I would be teaching, say, GCSE students who
Yeah.
won't be directly paying to me, their parent possibly would be paying to me. So when I'm doing marketing, do I kind of try to do that with student goes near schools, give leaflet, or
Don't hang around schools. And that is actually a brilliant question, and it is something that comes up a lot. Your customer is the person who pays the money. You name me a child who would voluntarily say, I want to go and do 10 hours of maths extra tuition a week. But you name me a parent who says, little Johnny isn't doing as well at his maths, so maybe we need to get him a tutor to help him along with that. So your customer is the person who pays the money. So tutoring is a very classic example of this. You aren't attempting to get the kids through the door by attempting to reach them. You're attempting to reach the parents of the children who need the extra tutorial support. Okay, so your marketing needs to be geared towards that. I've got a friend, Heather. I don't know if you've ever heard of a company called Kit McGrath. They're a franchise organisation that do English and maths tuition. And so basically, part of her marketing is to showcase the advances that the children have made in both their English and their maths over a given period of time. You know, they've gone up 3 reading ages in the last 8 weeks or something like that. The kids aren't looking at the stuff that she's putting out because, well, one thing, they're not on Facebook, but the parents are. So this is it. You have to follow the money. The customer is the person who is actually paying you. Right?
Thank you.
Anything else? Yeah.
Hi, good morning. I have a question about time management and kind of like hear your advice. So personally, because I work for a company, like I do event planning, so time management is very crucial. I just want your advice about it, like when we get overwhelmed about it because there's so much to do. How can we like restart and find the best way to go through all the steps so we can run a business like successfully?
Brilliant question. The first thing is once you get overwhelmed, the first thing you've got to do is stop and take a deep breath and then do something to get rid of whatever's running around inside you, not alcohol. Yeah. you have to do something, go out for a walk, talk to somebody, whatever it is. The thing I find most about time management with people, particularly when you're an ultra small business, is that you don't differentiate between projects and tasks and you don't granulate enough. So classic example could be writing a blog. Let's say you decide that you want to put blogs on a website. So people put into their to-do list on a certain day, write a blog. That is a project, not a task. The first thing would be, 10 minutes to decide on the topic, and you might do that on Monday. On Tuesday, you might think, I've got my topic now. Let me do some quick searches on Google to find out what words people are actually searching for in that topic. So I can write a blog that's using the words that people are actually searching for. So I can come up with a title, 15 minutes. Wednesday, you might think about, okay, let's sort out the structure. So what are the main points I want to make in this blog? Right. So what I'm getting at here is that over time, what you do is you break things down into 10 and 15-minute chunks. Because even if you got to Thursday and you thought, well, I've done all my prep, Thursday was the day I was going to set aside for actually writing this thing. And what I would be recommending is that you use AI to help you with that. But something happens on Thursday and you can't do it. Well, that's fine because you've done all the prep things. So you can just shift it to Friday, or if you really want to, maybe even push it into Saturday. So it doesn't become overwhelming, right? If you just put in on Thursday, I'm going to do my blog, and something happens on Thursday, it doesn't get done. Am I making sense there? So everything that you're doing, I had a client who had on the top of the to-do list, create a website. What? There's so many moving parts in that. So this is why diaries are really important. To-do lists are great, but a really good diary with times blocked out in it. That's why I use the diary on my phone, actually, because you can block it out in 15-minute chunks. because if you have a half an hour, it's better to do 15 minutes on 2 things than a half an hour on 1, because you're moving 2 things further forward. Okay, does that help?
Yeah.
Thank you. Liz, did you have a
I
question?
was going to say, Enterprise Nation has got a stand downstairs on the first floor. Oh. So Enterprise Nation has got a stand downstairs on the first floor, and we've got lots of advisors who can just chat to you today. If you want to go down, just go and see me or Ryan, and we will organise it for you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kathy.
I think there's just one more quick question.
Hi, thank you for the session that you delivered. It was really interesting and engaging. I just had a question regarding, marketing and connecting with your customer base. Would you say that it's possible to do that faceless? So not necessarily being the face of your brand. That some of the tactics you mentioned were going to locations where your customers will be and so on. A lot of people do use social media now, but yeah, so would you say it's possible to achieve success, but maybe being behind the scene and letting your products be the, yeah.
The biggest development I think there's been over time has been people wanting to know the origin story and the genesis of a business. And so, for example, on a website, the page that gets overlooked the most, but it's probably the most important page on a website, is the About page. And so they want to know who you are, what brought you to this point, why you were inspired. A classic example, I was working with a young woman who had developed this app and a product where you could put things into a box in a freezer, take it straight out, put it in an oven. It was for using leftovers. She was a single mum, 3 kids, and she wanted to do something that helped, stretch the budget. And on her website, she was doing okay in terms of sales. And on her website, she said, this is smart, etc. What we're selling, etc. And it was sort of okay, limping along. As soon as we did some changes on that About page that said, this is me, this is why I invented this thing, this is why I'm doing it. This is how it can help you. She was speaking directly to people with the same issues as she had, and her sales actually went up really, really substantially. So I think there is the possibility of, I don't think there's a possibility of being anonymous. That's not necessarily possible. If going out and meeting people face to face is an issue, there might be some things you could do online that would do it. But I think if you try not to be seen in the business, it will put people off. And sometimes it can ring alarm bells because they think, who's the person behind this? Can I trust them? So, and trust, nobody will buy anything if they don't trust, which is why con artists are really good, because they get you to trust them, right? So it's sort of half of one and another, if that makes sense to you. But concentrate on your About pages on your websites, folks. That would be the one I'd work on most. It's really, really a key thing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh.